Hello, this is Maria, and here's my story. I was born March 24th, 1994, here in Reno, Nevada. Both of my parents immigrated here from Mexico in hopes to provide their children with a better life, which this was including me. Today, I am fortunate enough to be living in this country that has provided so much for me and continues to do so. But growing up and trying to discover my identity wasn't easy, and to be honest, I I really didn't come I didn't really start identifying myself as Mexican American until just recently, and I know it sounds crazy, but that that's just how it happened. Um and it wasn't easy. I had the opportunity to become more in contact with my identity and my culture, but I knew what my nationality was, and that I had a connection to Mexico because of my parents, but I never knew how to bring like the whole picture together of being American and Mexican. Because I also am American. I was born here in the US, and that was pretty much all I grew up learning my whole life. So, but now I will be going back to the beginning where it all started. So, follow me. Alright, so we're here. Well, I'll show you in a bit, but we're here in the neighborhood where I grew up. And this is a time in my life where I was completely lost about my identity. And I didn't really know who I was. And here in this area where I grew up, this was also a place where I felt like I was trapped within my own identity, and I didn't know where else. I didn't know what else there was for me outside of this neighborhood. I guess you can say this was the barrio for me. And I was just a kid just trying to find myself, because at this time I didn't know the true meaning behind like my culture or like my heritage or my customs. So we're gonna drive down, and I'm gonna show you where I grew up.
Tienes tu música.
Alright, so here we go, down memory lane. So, as we didn't really move much, we kind of just lived in the same neighborhood the whole time. So I used to live here when I was a little girl. This is where I lived, and then I started elementary school and middle school. I lived here in these apartments. So we didn't move much. We just kind of moved. We lived in the same complex. So, alright, so I guess, so living here most of my life, I felt like all I knew was that I was Mexican, and the people around me were Mexican, because we just hung out together, and that's just how it was. I didn't know that there was other aspects of culture within my Mexican identity other than just being it. So we as kids and myself, we didn't know how to identify ourselves. We didn't know what identity was. We were just kind of just living it. All I ever knew about my culture at the time was that I lived here, and this is where my parents lived. And for the longest time, I would not take pride of my American identity, because I was always around the Hispanic community, and I never really interacted with people outside of that. So after I left the neighborhood, I started to interact more with other nationalities, I guess you can say. And I know it's hard to believe, but this is when I started to realize that my life also consisted of my American culture. So technically I just considered myself Mexican, but I didn't know what it meant to be Mexican. Because I wasn't really, so I didn't know the history. So I just didn't know. I knew that we celebrated holidays differently, but I didn't know the difference between like how Mexicans celebrated Christmas, or how the Americans celebrated Christmas. I thought it was all the same. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is that I knew nothing about my Mexican culture. and I knew more about American history and culture, but I didn't want to identify myself as American because being Mexican was what I thought I knew. Alright, so after I moved out of that neighborhood, I moved here. And this is where I started to find myself. So about a year ago, my family was privileged enough to get their permanent residencies. So after not going to Mexico in over 15 years, we finally decided to just take off and take the 3-day drive down there to visit family. And this trip really opened my eyes on the way that I viewed Mexico growing up, and just getting the chance to be reunited with my family has shown me so much about what my culture and my traditions really mean. I got to experience the real way that my people lived, and I'm glad that I got to meet and talk to people about how we live life here in America as opposed to living life in Mexico. So coming back from this vacation has really made me appreciate my culture and my identity so much. It has freed me from that space where I felt trapped within my own identity, and it just has given me so much clarity on how I view myself and my culture, and how I view others who identify themselves the same as me. Alright, so ways that make me appreciate my identity is that the ways that I have learned to appreciate my identity is going to bailes, or just simply listening to Mexican music, as you can hear, or just simple things, just going horseback riding, or just simply being with my boyfriend. But my Mexican side, I have not forgotten about my American side. Even though it's a struggle balancing out the two at times, I managed to do it. And I mean, every day I feel like I'm living the American dream. I show my American side all the time. It lives in me, and I was taught the American way first, and I've just been so privileged to have been born in this country, and that I'm getting an education, and I am so thankful for that. Alright, so here inside this house is what I have left of my connection to my Mexican roots, and those are my parents. So come on in, let's go meet them.
Hay unos lentes que tienen unas lucecitas ya, ¿no?
Ajá.
Cuestan mil...
¿Para que no te pierdas?
No, o sea, ¿para qué chingaderas? Pues esos lentes, ayer un cliente los traía.
Mira.
¿Y te los enseñó? ¿Te
My
enseñó los
mother.
lentes? ¿Y qué digo?
Mira, se cayó.
¿Quién se cayó?
Mira, help me.
Bartolo, vente para acá a saludar. Bartolito. Ahí está.
Oh my god.
Que le digas
Vamos de la cabra. Está bien feo.
That's here. That's my family. My family.
Alright, so that's my parents. And that is the reason why I continue to move forward. No matter what I encounter in my life, and take advantage of every opportunity that's given to me because my parents didn't have that chance. So I am living my dream for them, and that's my story, and this is what makes me me.